So, till Poonam gets her organized, may I request everyone to remember the website name thegurunanak.com. Just add a the before. Grammatically it doesn't sound all right, but someone had taken the website name gurunanak.com and they wanted to charge us some $20,000 to give the name. So I said just add a the because there's only one Guru Nanak, so thegurunanak.com. You should not forget it. The series is available free of charge in 5 languages. There are 24 episodes. The way to really see it is if you see one episode a week, you will absorb the meanings. If you choose Urdu or Shahmukhi, Punjabi with Urdu script, those options are there. If you see one episode a week, it will take you 24 weeks. But I'm sure you'll learn a lot about the message of oneness, which I think the world needs now.
Yes, so basically what you saw just now was the very brief version of 24 episodes. So you can imagine the journey, how it unraveled slowly. And then each episode had its own shabads, which gave meaning to the episodes. And they all formed part of the Guru Granth Sahib later. So that was how it happened. Amardeep, do you want to tell us how you decided you want to get onto this journey with Guru Nanak?
Yeah, so some things just happen naturally. I mean, for those who don't know about my background, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm neither an author. I was a corporate executive, having spent about 25 years in the corporate world, having worked in India, Hong Kong and Singapore. In 2014, my life changed, and I'll not get into the reasons of that. But I ventured into Pakistan to search my roots, because my father was from Muzaffarabad and my mother was from Aptabad. That one visit changed my entire direction. And in 4 years, we did 2 books called Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. The second book was called The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. And we documented the Sikh legacy remnants across 126 cities and villages. That's the baseline. And we came to about 2018, and that energy started finishing off. In creative space, energy rises and then it finishes off. And in 2018, this thought came to my mind that no one has yet till date documented Guru Nanak's life in an audio-visual format. There are books available, but it has not been documented in a manner that the world can easily digest. And there are documentaries on Alexander the Great, and I wonder what's his greatness about, apart from killing people and expanding territories, and the world thinks that's really great, right? And Marco Polo traveled for his self-pursuit, for trade. Columbus traveled to search America and landed up in, to search for India and landed up in America. What a 180-degree deviation. But that's worthy like a narrative. World teaches us about that. And here's a man who travels for spiritual dialogues with one and another of different spiritual traditions just to give the message of oneness. Doesn't that deserve the world's attention? Because no one has done it till date. So that's where this thought embarked. And the biggest challenge in front of us was really how do you access the geographies? Because we are living in a very divided world today. We don't have trust. And if you map the territories, 9 countries, to map over 150 spiritual sites where these dialogues are happening, the texts and so on and so forth, it seemed like an impossible task. And when you really look at it, filmmaking becomes very expensive. And especially in a narrative like this, when you travel with a crew across 9 countries, it becomes really expensive, and we didn't have the money to do it. But then, I'll just say one thing and stop here is, it's in our tradition, there's a verse that comes that if you take one step, the energy that believes in you will come forward 10 steps to hold you. And that's exactly what has happened out here, and the narrative is in front of you.
So as we may know, Guru Nanak was the second most traveled person in the world. After Ibn Battuta. And yet he never wrote anything about himself or his travels. So the task of Amardeep to try and find and how to go about this whole thing was an immense one. And how did you do it?
No, that's a very good question that you raise. Ibn Battuta wrote his memoirs, right? A lot of people who travel write about themselves. But Guru Nanak is unique. He was not on a quest to see the world. He was on a quest to understand oneness, to impart the message. Guru Nanak says, "Jab lag duniya rahiye Nanak, kich suniye, kich kahiye." Till you are in this world, listen and impart. But listen and impart, right? And those dialogues that he's having is all that he was interested in. He's written over 960 verses in the scripture that we believe in which Baba Farid is there, Kabir is there, the other Sikh gurus are there. There are 15 saints of the Indic spiritual tradition spanning from Pakistan across India right up till Maharashtra, residing along with Guru Nanak in that scripture that we bow down to every day. That means we are bowing down to all faiths. Every day in a Sikh Gurdwara, that's what you're bowing down to principally. It's a different thing that the faiths get hardened over a period of time. But Guru Nanak wrote nothing about his life. That's the established thing. Now, some 60 years after his life, people of faith started writing hagiographies. Now, hagiographies will always be biased. They will have some biases. But then the Sikh tradition spans of the Guruship for about 250 years, first to the 10th Guru. Now, this is happening in the times of the second, third Guru that the hagiographies start getting written. So if you keep the biases aside, because if I'm going to write about Guru Nanak as a Sikh, I will be biased because I believe in him, right? If you will write about Prophet Muhammad, you will be biased, right? So that's taken for granted. But then if you look at the disparities and the commonalities, a narrative can be constructed, because up to about 60 years after his life till about 150 years after his life, a lot of narrative was written. That was the primary source that we took. Because thereafter what happens after 150 years, the texts start expanding, and in the current WhatsApp and the Facebook universities, the narrative continues to expand. So that's not our focus. All we said is take the narratives up to 150 years and can we reconstruct that account. And that account basically meant traveling across Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi, Tibet, India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Those are the 9 countries, over 150 odd sites. So those were the resources. But then what our purpose is to understand Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak cannot be understood just by randomly traveling to these sites. The question is, what's the dialogue that he's having in each of these sites with the various spiritual traditions? And those dialogues are the verses inside this. And that's what Guru Nanak has written. That's the only thing that he's written. So as we go into these sites, we are taking those verses and through that trying to understand Guru Nanak's mindset. And what's he trying to communicate in those times which are very relevant today. And that's how the narrative has been constructed.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced in this journey of yours that you were collecting?
Yeah, I briefly alluded to it. The biggest challenge is when you simply take the narrative and you take those sites and you put it on a map and you say, where are these sites across, right? And you realize that 70% of the landmass that you want to travel into is today not accessible because of visa problems, your nationality problems, your security reasons. Going as a videographer with a team, already the antennas will be high up. I have done 2 books on Pakistan. I mean, I'm really grateful to the Pakistan government that they've allowed me to do a lot of research in this country over the past 9 years. And thanks to all the people of Pakistan and as well as the government that has supported us at different times. But I tell you, it has not been easy. No one has rolled a red carpet for us. No one has done it. Even to the point visas have got stuck. But some energy was helping us. We just kept adamant and kept focused and the energy started happening. Now you take this, where I've actually not given a narrative that divides us in my 2 books. I've just documented. And yet the trust took a long time to actually happen, that we were allowed to get into certain places, that also because of divine energies. Now take that and say, I want to go to Tibet. I want to go to Iran. I want to go to Afghanistan. You're going at your own life risk, right? So it becomes more and more complicated. And the second thing is, if you take a team from Pakistan, you can't enter India. You take a team from India, you can't enter Pakistan. how do you solve for this? You got to have different teams around it. You take the budgets. I mean, my wife is here. She's traveled as Nikki, can you just get up once again? Just show your face. So she's sitting here. She's traveled for 18 months. For 18 months, we were on the road, she and me, along with our sons across India and Pakistan. They are our family now. Because there was one team from Pakistan that traveled with us, there was one team from India that traveled with us in different countries, but all young people. And 18 months as a male and female trying to lead, and this is where one of the Guru Nanak's verses comes into play, where he says, Ape Purakh, Ape Nari. That energy itself is male and feminine. So we today living in a world where we are trying to make the genders come to a parity. But Guru Nanak 500 years back is talking about gender parity, and that's how this whole narrative got done. So these are the basic challenges, right? And then the moment we finished, COVID shut down the world. Right at the time we finished our filming across 18 months, 3 days before the world shut down. And we took 45 terabytes of data, went into Singapore. We didn't know how to process this data, because what we had filmed the first day, we had forgotten what we had filmed. 18 months down the line, right? We were just dumping data. And Kamran Fazal, who's our main editor, he's from Pakistan. And we got him into Singapore. We increased the cost of doing this whole thing. And we started editing it there. The talent is great out here because our cameraman, our editor, basically Pakistanis, and we applaud them. I mean, this is a very high quality production. So these are the basic challenges that have happened, but we don't look at it as any more challenges. They've shaped who we are. They've taught us much about life, and they've taught us that if the mindset is right, the energies will attract.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about the music? Because music and the shabads were like the fulcrum on which the whole, documentary rested, and gave you a entire...
Yeah. So what you saw is a small cut out here. You were not given a glimpse of our lady singer. So we've taken, as I said earlier, Guru Nanak has written about 960 verses, through which we are trying to understand. ये पूरी docuseries सिर्फ एक बहाना है, क्योंकि हमें गुरु नानक के वहदत का जो मैसेज है वो समझाना है, right? So it's the message that has to come out at every place, right? A dialogue. अब वो dialogue, if I just keep saying it, it will not make sense. So it has to be sung. And Guru Nanak has written his compositions in 37 rags. 37 rags. We maintained the principle, which was that every shabad, the verse, जो कलाम कहते हैं, जो कलाम जो लिखा गया है, हमारे ट्रेडिशन में शब्द बोलते हैं, will be sung in the rag that it has been written in our scripture. Now the challenge of partition, we think about humans. Let me tell you an interesting challenge we faced. First and foremost, we had to look for a person who's going to sing. We don't want to personify Guru Nanak, because like in Islam, you don't personify Prophet Muhammad. We don't want to personify. So there's no acting happening here. But whenever the Guru Nanak's verse, let's say in Pir Abdul Qadir Gilani ji's site, if there's a verse that has happened, it has to be sung. It will be sung by a male voice. So whenever a male voice is singing, it means it's telling that Guru Nanak is having a dialogue with a spiritual tradition. But you see, 550 years after his life, it is me who as a presenter is going through this journey. So my mind is also going through questions and probing to try to understand Guru Nanak. I see the world is broken. I see some places where people are helping us. I see a lot of goods and bads. And my mind poses some questions. But we don't tell the answers through our mind. We try and search for a verse of Guru Nanak and play the appropriate message through a singing. Now that singing has been done by a Pakistani singer, who's a lady singer. Because वो मेरी रूह है, because मेरी रूह जवाब सवाल कर रही है, तो उसको एक लेडी सिंगर को हमने अडॉप्ट किया. That is Salima Khwaja. She's in Lahore. Why we chose her? Here's the partition story to this. When Guru Nanak traveled for 22 years, of which 20 years was his Muslim friend, which was Bhai Mardana. Now Bhai Mardana, his legacy was carried forward in our Sikh tradition by the Muslim bards, the Muslim singers, who used to sing in the Gurdwaras till 1947. They were given a space. We call them as rababis because Bhai Mardana used to play the rabab. Now, they were not playing rabab by 1947 because harmonium has replaced the rabab, but we used to fondly call them as rababis. 1947 divided, the Radcliffe line divided based on partition of religions, and all the Muslim rababis came on this side. And all the patrons, the Sikhs and Hindus, went on the other side. This tradition dwindled and finished off. Now, Salima Khwaja searched for a rababi called by the name of Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Chand, who came from Goindwal Sahib in East Punjab to Lahore. And he somehow kept the tradition alive. So when we heard her, and we said she doesn't have Bhai Mardana's DNA in her blood, but she's made the effort to learn the tradition. So we said she's going to be the voice that will do the music for our series as a representation of my soul. The last thing I'll say out here is, when we started recording with her, what we realized is that partition has also divided the rags. Because 37 rags of Guru Granth Sahib, which Guru Nanak has written in East Punjab, we sing them. But this side, about good 20 odd rags, Salima did not know. Now that resulted in us conducting an over the border on the internet training for 1 year. But we said, we will do it right. We want to revive a tradition. And if we don't do it right, there's no hurry out here. And so we deputed Salima and our male singer out of East Punjab on the internet. They trained for 1 year. And then Salima started recording. So that's the effort we've gone to. Today, Salima Khwaja has become the first Pakistani after 47, a Muslim singer who has sung in all 37 rags of Guru Nanak. Yeah, sure. या वहाँ पीछे माइक दीजिएगा प्लीज. हाँ जी.
When you say that he believed in gender parity, can you just tell me a little bit more about what that really means?
सो क्यों मंदा आखिए, पंजाबी समझते होगे. सो क्यों मंदा आखिए, जित जम्मे राजान. A lady gives birth to the highest of personalities. ਰਾਜਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਨਮ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਮੰਦਾ ਆਖਦੇ ਹੋ. ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ's verse.
Okay, thank you.
I talked about आपे पुरख आपे नारी, आपे पासा आपे पासाई. मतलब he himself is the male, he himself, not he, that energy itself is the male, because we have this tendency to equate God to a he, but he is neutral. That energy itself is male and female. He's talking 500 years back. In the Gangetic belt, the tradition, when the women would go through the menstrual cycle, they would be barred from entering the temples. Now, there's a reason, a scientific reason behind it. She should be well rested, right? But that became a religious differentiation for the women not to come inside. And he's questioning that in Varanasi. He says, why do you call this as becoming achut at that time? Achut is in your mind. He is far ahead of his time. He needs to be understood. He was a social reformer. Unfortunately, he's boxed into religion.
I just had a quick question. Thank you. That was an amazing documentary. I think in Pakistan there is a tragedy where we're disconnected from heroes that are indigenous to this land and replaced by people who may not be indigenous. And I think the entire Sikh tradition is something that comes from South Asia and is very indigenous to South Asia. And we're familiar with Bulle Shah's Kalam and Baba Fariduddin Ganshakar, but Guru Nanak from that pantheon is somehow left out a lot of the times. I just wanted to ask you, as someone who traveled across South Asia and many other countries, what would be Guru Nanak's vision for South Asia today?
Guru Nanak's vision starts from the first word of the scripture and it ends there. The Trinity, which the Abrahamic traditions talk about, you know the Trinity, right? In the Hindu tradition was Om, Om, right, which is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, which is three energies: creator, operator, and destroyer, which is the trinity even the Abrahamic traditions talk about. But he does one thing, that Omkar he takes and he puts one before that, the numeral one. And that one basically means that this entire creative energy is oneness. That's the essence of his 960 verses. You and me are interconnected. I and she are interconnected. If I do something wrong to a tree, the environment gets actually impacted. If I kill ruthlessly the animals, we get impacted. It's the oneness. We are one ecosystem. That's what his message is. So his message to the entire world essentially is what Rabindranath Tagore, who wrote the national anthem for India and Bangladesh, when he was asked to write the national anthem because he got a Nobel Prize, when he was asked in Calcutta to write the national anthem for the world, a world anthem, and he says that's already written, and that's written by Guru Nanak, and you got to read his verse, which will be there in episode 12 at Puri. Kaisi aarti hoye bhavkanna teri aarti. I will not get into details of that, but if you hear that verse, that's the world anthem. And Rabindranath chose not to write it. He says Nanak has already written it.
Hi, at the cost of, I don't want to sound political, but I am asking this question as a student of cultural studies. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੜ੍ਹਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨਸ ਪ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਵ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਰਾਗ ਹੋ ਗਏ, ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ. ਆਈ ਜਸਟ ਵਾਂਟ ਅ ਬਰੀਫ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਔਨ ਦ ਲਹਿੰਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵਿਚ ਇਜ਼ ਲਾਈਕ ਈਸਟਰਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਜ਼ੀਬ ਕਲਚਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬੋਲੀਆਂ ਤੱਕ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ 'ਚ ਪ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਵ ਹੋਈ ਉਹ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ. ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੱਕ ਬੈਠੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਬੋਲੀਆਂ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ. ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਅਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਲਚਰ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਵ ਰੱਖ ਸਕਾਂਗੇ? ਮਤਲਬ ਜਸਟ ਯੋਰ ਕਮੈਂਟ.
ਦੇਖੋ ਜੀ, ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਅਤੇ ਕਲਚਰ ਤੇ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਇੰਟਰਟਵਾਈਨਡ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਾਲ. ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਇਸਨੂੰ ਦੂਜੇ ਐਂਗਲ ਨਾਲ ਕਹਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਵੈਨ ਵੀ ਟਾਕ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ, ਮੈਂ ਕਲਚਰਲ ਐਸਪੈਕਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਚੜ੍ਹਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਲਹਿੰਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ. ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਦੀ. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਚੜ੍ਹਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਲਹਿੰਦਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ, ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਹਜੇ ਡਿਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਮੋਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ. ਬਈ ਇੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਣ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੱਗੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ. ਇਨਸਾਨੀਅਤ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੈ, ਚੋਰੀ ਬਜਾਈ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਧਰੇ ਗਨਸ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਤੇ our whole culture has become restrict. I'm not saying we should not dance, we should not laugh, we should enjoy, right? But our entire culture is defined as only drugs, liquor, ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ ਗਾਲਾਂ ਕੱਢਣੀ. Is this what Guru Nanak stands for? And that's the culture that I want to focus on. I'm not concerned about this culture here because world is one. I'm equally concerned about the American culture, the African culture, all the cultures. Why should I only be concerned about this? By the way, I have nothing to do with this Punjab as we define today. My father was from Kashmir. मैं बोलता पंजाबी हाँ because वो पहाड़ी पंजाबी बोलते सन उत्थे. But ये जरा आज defined पंजाब है ना, मेरा उससे कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. I'm not from this land. Does that mean that the principles of that visionary leader is what I should focus on, or I should focus on and identify myself to this Punjab? I think that's what the message would be.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Hanji.
एक हथ तस्बीह एक हथ माला ना ओ हिंदू ते ना मुसलमान दिसदा. एक गुरु नानक साहब वास्ते बाबा फरीद ने लिखिया कीता यार दा मजहब कबूल मैं भी इस विच इस्लाम ईमान कीता यार दा मजहब कबूल मैं भी इस विच इस्लाम ईमान इस विच इस्लाम ईमान दिसदा. एक हथ तस्बीह एक हथ माला ना ओ हिंदू ते ना मुसलमान दिसदा.
थैंक यू वेरी मच. लेकिन ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਗਰ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੋਗਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਨਕਾਣਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਬੋਲਿਆ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਤੇ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ के ना हिंदुओं का गुरु नहीं. ठीक है, वो मैं गल अगर मैसेज समझ लीजिए कि गल तो वही आंदी डॉक्यूमेंट्री से क्या ना हिंदुओं का गुरु मुसलमानों का पीर, राइट? गल तो वही है. हुण इहदे इवॉल्विंग ट्रेडिशंस दे अंदर बड़े कलाम निकलते रहते हैं. सो ये ट्रेडिशंस के अंदर इवॉल्व होते रहेंगे, बट आई थिंक एसेंस सानू समझना चाहिए.
वननेस मैसेज. लेकिन
जिस वक्त हुई है वो यानी कि पार्टीशन हुई है, तो उस वक्त कितना ज़्यादा खून बहा, कितना ज़्यादा सब इतना ज़्यादा हुआ कि बंदा हैरान हो जाता है। उस वक्त तो नहीं पता चलता कौन हिंदू कौन सिख है और कौन मुसलमान है, दोनों तरफ इस तरह होगा।
बिल्कुल।
और इसी तरह अब फ़लस्तीन में क्या हो रहा है वो भी पता ही होगा सबको।
हाँ जी।
रहमान रहीम, अल्लाह मुसल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। सत श्री अकाल अमरदीप ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੇ ਨਿੱਕੀ ਨੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਿੰਗਾਪੁਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਨਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਮਿਲੇ, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ 2 ਘੰਟੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਫੀਲ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਰਾਇਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਪਿਆ।
ਵੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਡ ਵੈਲ,
ਵੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਡ ਐਂਡ ਲਿਟਲੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਿੰਗਾਪੁਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਸਿੰਗਾਪੁਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਟਾਈਮ ਇੰਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਯਾਦ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਟਾਈਮ ਸਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਨਾ ਯਾਦ ਹੈ।
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ।
ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ, ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਅਤੇ ਉਰਦੂ 'ਚੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜ਼ਬਾਨ 'ਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਾ ਛੱਡਿਆ। ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ, ਮੈਂ ਲਾਂਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਪਿਆ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਪੋਸੀਬਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੇ ਬੀ ਆਫਟਰ 10-15-20 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕਿ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜ਼ਾਤ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਸਾਊਥ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਯੂਨੀਫਾਈਂਗ ਫੈਕਟਰ ਬਣ ਜਾਏ?
ਮੈਂ ਕੌਣ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਹਿਣ ਵਾਲਾ? ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਰਜ਼ਾ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਰਜ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਰਹੀਏ ਤੇ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ। I'm not someone who's qualified। ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਮਝਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਜਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਰਨੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਪੂਰੇ ਕੰਪਲੈਕਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਮੇਰੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਬੜੀ ਖਾਮੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਬੜੀ ਖਾਮੀਆਂ ਅਜੇ ਵੀ ਨੇ, ਗੁੱਸਾ ਤੱਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਿਆ, ਰਾਈਟ। ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਬਟ ਇਹ ਰਜ਼ਾ ਨੂੰ ਕਬੂਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੋ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਰੱਬ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ। ਉਹ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਆਇਆ ਨਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਬਾਬਰ ਨੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਹ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣੋ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਵਾਪਸ। ਬਾਬਰ ਦੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਦੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਉਹੀ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਗਾ ਰਹੇ, ਕੋਈ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ ਗਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਜਨਮ ਸਾਖੀ ਦਿੰਦਾ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਹ ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਰਜ਼ਾ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਉਹੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਏਗਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ। ਹਾਂਜੀ ਅੰਜੁਮ ਜੀ। Mic just de do, please. I know this is the last question. You're not giving the mic, so yeah.
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਐਸਾ ਇੰਡੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਸ੍ਰੀਲੰਕਾ ਗਏ, ਬੰਗਲਾਦੇਸ਼ ਗਏ, ਤਿੱਬਤ ਗਏ, ਇਰਾਕ ਗਏ, ਈਰਾਨ ਗਏ, ਮੱਕਾ ਗਏ, ਸਾਊਦੀ ਅਰੇਬੀਆ, ਤੇ what was the way of communication from Baba Ji? Baba Ji was a pure Punjabi, I mean saint. Bhai Mardana was a Punjabi. So how they communicate over all these areas and with these saints and local peoples?
No, very good question ਅੰਜੁਮ ਜੀ। ਇਹਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ, ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਮਾਨਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਹਵਾਈ ਜਹਾਜ਼ 'ਚ ਬਹਿਨੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ 12 ਘੰਟੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੰਡਨ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਉਹ ਜ਼ਮਾਨਾ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ। ਹੁਣ ਪੀਪਲ ਯੂ ਸ਼ੁਡ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਸਲੋਲੀ। ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਗਰ ਦੇਖੋ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦਿਓ ਕਿ 500 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਲੋਕੀ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਹਜ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ? ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ ਨਾ। ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਸਨ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਦੱਸੋ। ਹਾਂ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ, ਕਾਫਿਲੇ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਸਨ, ਕਾਫਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਕੁਝ ਜੋ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਜੋੜ ਮੇਲਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਸਨ। ਇੱਥੋਂ ਕੈਲਾਸ਼ ਮਾਨ ਸਰੋਵਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ, ਸ਼ਿਵਾ ਦੀ ਸਾਈਡ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਸਨ ਉਹਨੂੰ, ਹਿੰਦੂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਰਤੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ। ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸਨ? ਜਨਮ ਸਾਖੀ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਨਸੁਖ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਹ ਟ੍ਰੇਡਰ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਹ ਸ਼੍ਰੀਲੰਕਾ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਉਹਨੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਰਾਜਾ ਸ਼ਿਵਨਾਥ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉੱਥੇ, ਤੇ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਤੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਕਾਫਲਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦੇਣਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੰਧ ਤੋਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਮੱਕਾ ਮਦੀਨਾ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਮਖਦੂਮ ਆਫ ਮੁਲਤਾਨ ਔਰ ਮਖਦੂਮ ਆਫ ਉੱਚ ਉਹ ਨਾਲ ਗਏ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਫਲੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ, ਉਹ ਕਾਫਲਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਸਨ। ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਰਹੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ, ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੋਕੈਬਲਰੀ ਦੇਖੋ, ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹੈ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਬੈਠੀਏ ਨਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਫਾਰਸੀ ਹੈ, ਬ੍ਰਿਜ ਹੈ, ਹੋਰ ਕਿਤਨੀ ਹੋਰ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ। ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਪੂਰਾ ਉਹ ਮੇਲ ਗੋਬਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਕਿ ਕਿਤਨੇ ਕਿਤਨੇ ਵਰਡਸ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਦੈਟਸ ਦੀ ਆਨਸਰ ਆਈਲ ਗਿਵ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ। ਫਿਰ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ thegurunanak.com ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ, ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਪੈਸੇ ਪੂਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਮੋਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ। ਹਾਂ, ਇਹ ਕੋਈ ਕਮਰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਫ੍ਰੀ 'ਚ ਦੇ ਰੱਖੇ ਆ। 10 ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ, ਉਹ ਦੇਖਣ, 10 ਬੰਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ, ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਚਲਾਓ।